UCLA can reclaim the Big Ten title.
You are Locked On Women's Basketball, your daily podcast on women's basketball. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Locked On Women's Basketball, your number one sports podcast network, free on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. I'm here with Golden State Valkyries radio analyst Sophia Jones. My name is Kalia Butler, the sideline reporter for the Chicago Sky. I hope everybody had a great holiday. Sophia and I were talking about it this morning. We're in that weird in-between of, it's not Christmas, but it's not the new year just yet. People are and aren't back to work. Teams have been on break and now season is really getting into the full swing. We're all in just a little gray area right now. But the one thing that can be consistent is obviously Locked On Women's Basketball. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Before tip-off, check the FanDuel app and see what's dropping during NBA Happy Hour every Friday from 6 to 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Okay, what we're getting into today. We're going to go over if Arike Ogunbowale will stay with the Dallas Wings. We're also going to get into more conference action and what we saw this weekend. But first, UCLA gets another ranked win, and they're looking pretty difficult to get past. Hence why I said that they can reclaim their Big Ten title. It was a really tough one between Ohio State. They kept it close, but they did end up defeating them 82-75. Standout for UCLA was Lauren Betts, 18 points, 16 rebounds, 4 assists, 3 blocks, her fourth double-double of the season. And, we've seen her go through maybe a couple high and low points to start this season, but she's looking ready to go for conference play.
Definitely. I think my favorite part about the way that she played there, she was very aggressive, but she was decisive in her aggressiveness. We already know that Lauren Betts is going to see different coverages. Most of the time, multiple bodies are trying to show because she just eviscerates one-on-one coverage. But she just, like I said, she looked decisive, and either if she was going to finish or pass out. Those 18 points were very efficient. She was 9 of 18, so right around 50%. But a lot of those rebounds also she got from the offensive end. So she had 9 O boards compared to 7 defensive. And those 9 offensive rebounds were another reason why I think she was able to be so decisive in her back to the basket, because she's just getting it, keeping the ball high, and going right back up.
Another contributor for UCLA was Kiki Rice, 16 points, which also meant she passed her 1,500 career points with the win. We spoke a lot about the tandem between Lauren Betts and Kiki Rice going into this game, but we also had some bench play that was contributing too.
Yeah, Angela Dukulich has come in every single game off the bench, or nearly every single game, and provided such a boost for UCLA. She finished with 15 points and 5 rebounds. She is more of a 3-point shooter in the front court, but she's so tall that she draws out those defenders. And it's a great tandem in the front court between her and Lauren Betts when they're on the floor at the same time, because, again, it just offers better spacing. And both players honestly really benefit, and that's why they're the leading scorers for UCLA.
Yeah, when it comes to UCLA, obviously it's going to be very physical post play. Rebounding is always going to be a center point for them. We see Lauren Betts in there, obviously contributing on the boards. But when you see the size of even some of the guard play too, this is an overall very big team. So physicality has been a strong point for them. And I think that's kind of part of really what started to dig into Ohio State going up against them. We spoke about in the last podcast, Ohio State needing to up their defensive intensity a little bit to go against a team like UCLA. How do you think they did in that execution, considering they did keep it close the majority of the game?
They did, and they showed a lot of fight too. UCLA's largest lead was 16 points at a certain point of time in the fourth quarter, but UCLA, they just make enough winning plays and turning out the pressure defensively in their physicality, like you mentioned. that just end up putting them in favorable spots offensively. So like they catch Ohio State on their heels on that end of the floor a lot. They get so many easy looks just in transition, moving the ball, finding the gaps where someone isn't quite set, and just wearing down Ohio State. But Ohio State, where they really lost the game, was in the paint, quite frankly. UCLA out-rebounded Ohio State 47-33. There was a 35-10 advantage in second chance points. So there was just a huge issue there boxing out for the Buckeyes. And UCLA also outscored Ohio State 50-32 in points in the paint. So that was the area of dominance that the Bruins really thrived in, that you could definitely see Ohio State really struggled in. That's Ohio State's first home loss of the season. Also, they struggled to shoot three-pointers. They were high volume. They shot 33 pointers, but they're only 7 of 30, which is 23%. Again, when you're forced to rely on that perimeter play and you're stuck out there because of how locked up UCLA has the paint, and then you still are dealing with a lot of that physicality and speed that the perimeter players of the Bruins have, it just resulted in that poor shooting night for the Ohio State.
When we think of Ohio State, you said overall a poor shooting night, but somebody that did have a good shooting night for the Buckeyes was Jaloni Cambridge, who led all scorers with 28 points. And she was the driving force of keeping Ohio State in the game. As you said, UCLA had gotten up to as much as a 16-point lead at the end of the game. I believe both teams had scored 19 points to keep them in it, in the fourth quarter, and largely due to her push.
Yeah, she essentially spearheaded that 12-2 run in the fourth quarter that cut UCLA's lead from 16-6. And this was a 6-point game within maybe the last 2 minutes, really giving Ohio State a lot of fight. But like you mentioned, Cambridge, she was just everywhere trying to really will her team to get that win. She had the game high 28 points. Even in the first half, she was the main primary offensive playmaker for Ohio State. She had 16 of their 33 points in that first half. And I mean, that's just that's objective reasoning right there, that she was their primary offense. But she was incredible. And I think she'll continue to make her impact because, like I said, Ohio State, they showed a lot of fight, and they're not going to be a team to just roll over.
Absolutely. Obviously, still two ranked opponents. But I want to go back to your point about obviously just some of the paint play, and that's kind of where Ohio State lost the game, unfortunately. But also when you're thinking of the rebounding caliber of UCLA compared to what Ohio State did as well, when you're looking at the second chance points too, UCLA had 35 second chance points compared to just 10 for Ohio State. Realistically, when you're giving these teams extra opportunities for possessions, especially a UCLA team that has so many scoring threats, and we've really seen them expand outside of just utilizing Lauren Betts. Obviously, you have her sister that's coming in and getting some play as well with Sienna. The guard play has looked really well overall. They have bench play now too. They're a very well-rounded team. But when you're looking towards the rest of conference play, teams are really going to need to figure out how to crack down and box Lauren Betts out. I think that's the biggest thing. Send 3 bodies on her and box the girl out.
I know. You just have to be the lower man, essentially. Just push her all the way out towards a 3-pointer if you can, and allow some of your other teammates to crash. That is more so the strategy that I would try to implement. But UCLA, they're the highest ranked team in the Big Ten, so they're going to continue having a target on their back. It's definitely not going to get any easier, despite Ohio State being, again, a ranked team.
A tough one to go up against for sure. UCLA coming away with the win. But coming up after this, we're going to get into some more conference action from around the NCAA. Fridays already feel different during basketball season, and FanDuel is making them even better. Every night before the game tips off, FanDuel gives fans a new way to kick off the weekend with NBA Happy Hour. NBA Happy Hour is your official pregame, a limited time window where special offers drop right outside the FanDuel app before the action starts. Opening the FanDuel app during happy hour, always brings something new. Boosts, bonuses, and surprises. So before tip-off, check the FanDuel app and see what's dropping during NBA Happy Hour every Friday from 6 to 7:30 p.m. A little basketball, a little action, and a whole lot of Friday energy. That's NBA Happy Hour only on FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NBA. Looking at some conference action that we've seen to start this holiday weekend, in the Big East, no surprise here. UConn defeating Butler. So rude. That's me. 94-47. Guys, my last name is Butler. I hope everyone put that together. 94-47. Obviously just remained really dominant within the Big East. And we said it was probably going to be some time before they really see another incredibly tough opponent. Looking across the Big East in general, they seem to have a relatively comfortable spot as number one once again. I don't think there's really going to be any team that can unfortunately compete with them at that level within the Big East.
Yeah, I would have to agree. I will say I called a Seton Hall game earlier this season. They're a pretty athletic and defensively based team. They actually received one first place vote in the preseason poll for the Big East. Don't know who voted, but
it was you, Sophia. We know it. No,
oh my gosh, that would take away like a little bit of my credibility because I would pick UConn, but I mean, I think that's a team that you have to put a little bit of respect on. Maybe a closer matchup than we might anticipate, but like it's just hard to see UConn losing in the Big East. And quite frankly, when it gets to March, it's hard to see UConn lose there either.
Exactly. We have the Big Ten, Michigan State, who's ranked 24th right now, beat Rutgers 70-64. Iowa went up against Penn State. Iowa currently ranked 14th right now, had a 99-76 victory. For Michigan State, they kept it close for a majority of the time, but was able to get a win at home. Rashonda Jones led Michigan State with 14 points and was perfect from the free throw line. Kennedy Blair recorded a double-double, so she had 12 points, 11 rebounds, adding 6 assists. Overall, they looked pretty decent, had a little bit of a colder shooting night compared to what they've had before, but honestly, the free throws relatively kept them within the game.
Exactly. And you don't get free throws without being aggressive trying to get to the rim. And I think that's where Michigan State found a lot of success, like you mentioned. Still a pretty close game against Rutgers, though. I mean, to only win by 6 when you're a ranked team against an unranked team, a lot of the time, rankings don't mean anything, or they mean a little bit, but not as much as people think they do. But especially when you're getting into conference play for these two teams specifically, because we know the conferences have been shifting so much recently, but a lot of these teams and players know each other. There's a sense of familiarity. They know what sets they're going to run. They know their style of basketball. And so that's where winning within the margins comes in. And when you look at some of the intangibles, like aggressiveness, like physicality, getting to free throw line, rebounding, another example, that's where some of these games are going to be won. And I think for Michigan State, they capitalized on that.
Absolutely. Sometimes you just got to have the strong fundamentals of basketball. Playing hard is not cool anymore, guys. Playing hard sometimes just gets the job done. Iowa, again, going up against Penn State, 99-76. But Ava Hayden, who I feel like we've kind of been waiting to have a little bit of a breakout game because we know what she is capable of for Iowa. We were really excited to see her in that Iowa State game, but got into some foul trouble. But she had a career high 27 points, which led the Hawkeyes. They also had 6 players in double figures. And Penn State isn't just, like an anybody team. Penn State is also obviously another great program. So seeing Iowa being able to have a pretty comfortable lead with this, especially coming off their loss that they had to UConn and just kind of getting back on pace for conference, they're going to be a very difficult team to get past too.
Yeah, and I think for Hayden to start off conference play, I think Iowa, they already won their first conference game, but overall to start these openers off so strong, I mean, especially with the career high, it really just sets the tone, especially when you're looking at that 27 points and she was 13 of 19. She's doing it very efficiently, 1 rebound away from a double-double. It's just good for Iowa to get that bounce back win. And again, start off conference play strong because things will not ever get easier in the Big Ten. And like you mentioned, Penn State, they're a solid team as well. They fall to 0-2 in the Big Ten. Overall record is 7-6. But one player that I want to highlight is Kiyomi McMiller. She's a transfer from Rutgers. Some of the best handles and deepest bag in women's basketball. Mm-hmm. You watch her play and she was running ones back in the day, probably still to this day. So she is not someone easy to have to defend because, again, she can score in such a flurry. So for Iowa to semi-contain her, I'll say semi because she had 20 points, but she was 9 of 20. So maybe the efficiency could go up just a little bit. But again, to contain her and force 4 turnovers as well, 20 turnovers as a whole for Penn State is pretty impressive.
Yeah, absolutely. When we look at the ACC, Duke beat Syracuse 71-51. And, we've had a whole segment talking about, is the ACC falling off a little bit? Is Duke the team that we expected them to necessarily look like, who had one of the top picks with finishing first in the ACC? And Syracuse has had a really strong start to their season. They've had some new pieces that have come in that have contributed really well. So being able to have a 20-point victory over them is no small feat. They controlled the game, especially in the second and fourth quarters, and had obviously a very comfortable win. Dominique Darius, that's for Syracuse, had 18 points. But overall, Duke's defense is kind of showing what we would have saw earlier this season. I think when we're looking at their ACC play compared to some tough contenders that they had to go up against at the beginning of this season, maybe they're not necessarily able to be SEC opponents. But I think when it comes to ACC play, they should have a good amount of relatively comfortable wins like this.
I agree. And towards the end of their non-conference season, it really did feel like they were showcasing more good moments than bad, and that they were turning that corner. And it's just about putting it together for 40 minutes. But Duke is a team that I could see, similar to what you said, gaining a little bit of momentum within this ACC play. Again, when you're in this conference and a lot of the other teams, it can be a little bit of a coach's battle as well. And when you have Carol Lawson at the helm, she has a great basketball mind. So I think that Duke still will be pretty well off. There are some tough teams. I think of specifically a Louisville or a Notre Dame, even North Carolina. Those are going to be extra tough opponents. But Duke, I think, is starting to put some of the pieces together.
Absolutely. And as you mentioned, we talked about that towards the back half, the beginning of this season too, before they were really getting into conference play, that it looks like they're slowly starting to build up that momentum and have one of those strongest scoring defenses that they've had within the ACC that we've seen before. So more to come from them. Coming up after this, we're going to talk about Arike and if she will be returning to the Dallas Wings.
Thank you for making Locked On Women's Basketball your first listen of the day, and thank you for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. If you haven't already, go check out our new Everydayer Club. Access to an ad-free audio feed for Locked On Women's Basketball, compatible with Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and every other major podcast app. Go to lockedonwomen'sbasketball.supercast.com or tap the link in the show notes to learn more.
Alrighty, so this has been on my timeline for some time now. The big question mark is, will Arike Ogunbowale return to the Dallas Wings? Anybody that listens to us knows that we had an entire podcast segment as well in regards to should she stay with the Wings and should they just really buy into Paige being the franchise player. I think there were spurts of that this past season. Obviously, when you have the rookie of the year on your team and it's literally Paige Beckers, all attention is going to her. Arike, I think when she first got to Dallas, coming out of Notre Dame and her entrance into the WNBA in general, that was the attention that she was getting. Like, she was that girl. She still is that girl. However, when you have a player like Paige Beckers, who now potentially has the opportunity to add an AZ Fudd on the team too, who could be a potential number 1 overall pick for Dallas, it's starting to look a little bit more like it would be best if Arike moved on from Dallas because she's no longer going to be the main option as we've seen before. We saw that a little bit this season, obviously, between her and Paige. If you want a clutch bucket, that's a hard choice between the two because Arike can do it. Once Arike sees a couple of shots go through, it's over with for everybody. But at the same time, it's Paige Beckers. She's missed buckets for a reason. But we say all this because Arike has shown the possibility of being one of the number 1 overall picks in this expansion draft right now to potentially go to the Portland Fire, who could be an interesting fit for her as she would be with a lot of young talent again, which we saw with Dallas.
Exactly. And it's young talent, but I would then add on that it's different young talent than the Dallas Wings have because there is, of course, not a Paige Beckers and whoever your next number 1 overall pick is going to be. But Arike, she didn't even play a whole lot for Dallas this year because she was managing a couple of different injuries. And that's sometimes that change of scenery when you go from when you're going through a season where you're having that type of just turmoil is what some of these players need. And we've seen it happen before. But for Arike, like you mentioned, I think the big caveat is going to be if AZ Fudd is going to be selected number 1 overall by the Dallas Wings, which there is a huge possibility that she will. I think the other pick that is maybe floating around number 1 would be Awa Pham, who is a center, of course, from Spain. But when you add AZ into the equation, that's a lot of backcourt players. That's a lot of shooters. And I don't know how Arike would necessarily fit into that system because she is a more so ball dominant player as opposed to a Paige or AZ who can move off ball a little bit more and get their shots maybe coming off of a couple of off ball screens and staggers. But for Arike, I think it's going to be a definite career question because I think for Dallas, I can't imagine there being a different thought process than building around Paige because that's going to be your future. That's who you want to highlight. As opposed to Arike, who has been in the league a couple of years. She's not necessarily your future. She's your now. Mm-hmm. And for Dallas, we've seen it happen also with WNBA, where if you just have a young core, you let that build up, and then that can lead to a dynasty. And just looking at some of the current dynasties where the aces are at the top, and then you also throw in Minnesota, you can throw in what Phoenix is, even the New York Liberty. But there are a lot of these teams that are so cemented in their status that will be hard to compete against that maybe now, but not in the future if you do decide to build up that young core. My question would be if Dallas does maybe do a sign and trade. I could see that happening as well, as opposed to just not protecting Arike. I mean, they still, I guess, would benefit because they can technically keep a player, or they can decide to, they can protect them in that expansion draft, where they can protect 5 players. But if you sign and trade, you can probably get something really good back, because there aren't many teams who wouldn't want Arike. Quite frankly, I think that if Dallas had the option, they would like to keep her as well, because like you said, she is that girl. I don't think that there are many players one-on-one. We saw it in the Unrivaled League, one-on-one, that are actually going toe-to-toe with her. Very, very select group. But you could get a lot on that return if you do decide to sign and trade Arike.
Yeah. As you mentioned, having Arike on our team is good no matter what. It's good for business for you no matter what. But that's the point that, that we're talking about, and the biggest emphasis, I think, within the league. And I mean, this goes from WNBA, NBA, no matter what sport, professional sport, whatever the case may be that you're playing right now, you are constantly looking towards the future. And Paige is the future, like you mentioned. She's honestly the now and the future. Obviously, her first season, she's already putting up 40-plus point performances multiple times throughout the season. She's winning Rookie of the Year. She's only getting better and better. Paige is the franchise player. There's no question about that. So now it's, to your point, how do you build around that, especially when you have an opportunity, a new head coach in Jose Fernandez coming in? And, usually when you have essentially a completely new staff, you want a new look, you kind of clear that. I think business-wise for Arike, you don't necessarily have to hide in shadows of any player on the team. And it's not just because it's not necessarily because she's not good enough. That's not in question at all. But at the end of the day, it's a business. And when you're building your business and you have your franchise player and you want to see who to surround her with, and you honestly probably want Paige to be the most ball dominant, you bring up a good point. Arike is a very ball dominant player, but when you have Paige, you're going to want to have the ball in her hand as much as possible, even if she can move the ball. It's just the reality of the situation. I think when you're looking at probably moving to the Portland Fire for Arike, it's a good look for her because she is relatively a veteran compared to some of these players on the team, but still trying to build around her in a way. So it's a hard balance for her, but the team is going to be her having Arike.
Exactly. And I think that it'll definitely be a major question that the Dallas Wings will be facing, especially heading into this CBA period and free agency.
Absolutely. We'll see what happens, but that will do it for us on Locked On Women's Basketball. Thank you so much for tuning in. We will see you guys again.